Welcome to the Ghost Show online, my fiends, booze, and ghouls. Your hosts, Seika Groves, Rachel Benter, and Ian Russell will discuss all things paranormal. Prepare to be afraid.
This week, Ian picked haunted lighthouses. Ian, what are you talking about?
Okay, well, as I say, I've got a couple, but
Okay.
The one I'm going to start with is actually in our neighborhood here in southern Ontario, and it's called the Gibraltar Point Lighthouse.
Hanlon's Point.
Oh, okay.
It is
I've actually
located on.
investigated at Hanlon's Point.
Sounds
Oh, have
familiar.
you?
Yes,
Yeah.
but I wasn't even going to talk about it, but yes, I have.
Yeah. So this lighthouse is located on Toronto Island, and
Yeah, technically Hanlon's Point, I believe.
on Lake Ontario. And this lighthouse today, even though it's not operational anymore, is the oldest existing lighthouse on all of the Great Lakes.
When was it
Oh,
built?
wow. How cool is that?
It dates back to just before the War of 1812.
Oh, wow.
Wow, that is really old.
That actual building? Because I thought it was rebuilt sometime in about 1840.
That was, they did do some construction, but the original lighthouse itself was
Right.
just before the War of 1812.
Interesting.
I did not know
And
that.
the very first lighthouse keeper, and he's the one who is said to haunt this
Yes.
lighthouse today.
Yes. And I can attest that there is definitely somebody there.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Oh,
Yeah, I've heard.
another place that needs a paranormal investigation. I wonder if they'd let us
yet
in.
myself, but that's on my list one day of places to go.
Yes.
So the very first lighthouse keeper, his name was John Radelmuller.
Radelmuller.
Oh,
And as I say, very first keeper of the light there. And during the War of 1812, he made his own barrels of beer. Obviously, as they all did, because you didn't just go off to the beer store to go and buy your
Right.
beer. So the ghost story, and I don't know whether there's any truth to this or not, but the story and then subsequent hauntings, which are still reported today, and Seika, you may be able to shed some light on this, is that soldiers from Fort York, there in Toronto, paid this guy a visit because they wanted his beer.
Right.
And
Oh.
he refused to give them any. And so the story goes is that they murdered this guy for his beer. They hacked up the body, dismembered it, and I've heard that there's actually been evidence. As I say, I don't know, but I've
Right.
heard there's been evidence that there was like a jawbone found. There
Oh,
were
That I
fragments
did
of
not
the
hear.
coffin. So that's the ghost story that I've heard related to that lighthouse.
Yeah, it's an interesting spot. I mean, let's face it. Originally, that wasn't islands, right? It was just a spit of land that came out, and you could have walked all the way around the crescent by Cherry Beach, come out and walked across to Hanlon's Point. It would have taken you, from where they were, where Fort York is, to walk that distance. I would suspect would have taken you the better part of an hour, maybe more, to get around there. Right. But it became islands later when they were trying to break it up to allow more water flow in and out, and to be able to create the breakwalls. And that's for the boat marinas and all of that. Right. So that used to be a spit of land. But yeah, I mean, I've heard the story of the murder, of course, when we went to Hanlon's Point years and years ago. I was a teenager the first time I went over there. There was no nude beach over there.
Yeah.
Nothing then. It was this
changing.
little spot on the islands that you could take that monorail train thing that, those like zoo buggy mobile things.
Mm-hmm.
They used to have one from Center Island, and you could go out and go there. So as teenagers, sometimes we would go out there and hang out at the beach for a bit and that. But they did do tours for a while, and I don't know if they're still ongoing, of the lighthouse. You could go take a tour, and it was pretty much the historical side of it. I don't even remember any ghosts being talked about at that point. But I've been there on my own, not necessarily on my own, with other people. But we went and we took some stuff with us, and we went and we kind of did a little investigation. And at the time, my other friend knew one of the tour people, and so we were able to go only into the lower part of the lighthouse. We were not allowed to go up the stairs or anything.
Oh wow!
But it's definitely got some weird vibes happening in there. It's odd. It's, sometimes when you walk into something, and Rachel, you'll be able to sort of get where I'm going with this. And where you just can't put your finger on what it is. It's just like,
oh yeah, you just know there's something
on here, right? It's like, it doesn't feel negative. You're not afraid of it. You don't feel like you should run or anything.
You're aware.
You're aware, right? But
yeah,
it's a definite vibe there, and I got that vibe when I visited. And it's a cool spot though, and it's really pretty there. And I think that they're getting a little bit more leery of just randomly allowing a lot of people over there now, because you have the houses and everything on the other part of the island, and people live there year round. And so, I think that the lighthouse now is probably more of a tourist attraction than anything. Right? It's definitely geared to being more of a tourist attraction, but it is a cool spot, definitely. And you really kind of feel isolated when you're out there if there's not a 6 months on the beach.
I bet it does in the winter when it's cold and the season's gone.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I haven't been
very isolating.
The islands really in the wintertime. The residents are sort of stuck there in the wintertime as well. So
crazy.
So what's your other lighthouse, Ian?
Okay. Another one I've got here is called Execution Rocks Lighthouse. And this is located in Long Island Sound, just a stone's throw away from New York City. And again, this site dates back to forever, the American Revolutionary War.
Okay.
And
right.
And it's just this chunk of rock that just sits there in the middle of Long Island Sound. And there were many, many shipwrecks resulting from this rock before the lighthouse had been built.
Okay.
And during the Revolutionary War, leading into why perhaps this location is haunted, the Revolutionary soldiers would take prisoners, and they would take them out to the what would be called Execution Rocks, and they would chain these prisoners up onto the rocks, and these prisoners would drown when the high tide came up.
Right, because we forget that that's actually the Atlantic Ocean there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's the ancient past of it. More recently, in the early 1900s, there was a guy named Carl Panzram, who was also known as
a pirate in pink pants from Penzance?
Well, I don't know if he was in pink pants, but he was a pirate, and he was also a serial killer.
Awesome.
And he was known by the name of Captain John O'Leary as an alias.
Yes.
And this guy, he would sail up and down Long Island Sound, and he was accused of, I've got a list, very nasty list here of what this guy was accused of. murder, arson, battery, robbery, burglary, vandalism, and rape.
Everything.
Yep.
Everything.
He was accused of over 100 suspected murders. When he was caught, he confessed to 21 of them, 5 of which have actually been confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And what he would do is, after he murdered all these people, he would take their bodies out to the execution rock site to dispose of the bodies.
Oh.
So you've got all of this residual, at the very least, residual haunted energy surrounding this location.
So I have 2 lighthouses, both local to me here.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, one of them is the one behind me.
Oh, cool.
So that one behind me is known as the Mohawk Island Lighthouse. And it's in Haldeman County. Technically, it's about a 20-minute drive from my house down the shore. It's one of my favorite places to go and visit. And I say this because this is on an island, so you can't get to it unless you're in a boat.
Oh, right.
It's
Okay.
also got nothing left of it. Essentially, the wooden top is missing. The staircase was removed. And you can visit it from September the 1st until March 31st. So I'm not really sure how you're going to get out there in the winter time on Lake Erie. But, and I shall point out both of these lighthouses are in Lake Erie.
So do they have to sort of withstand some harsh weather conditions then?
Yes. This one was originally built in 1838. And again, because there were so many shipwrecks on Lake Erie, and especially coming towards where I live, which is in Port Colborne, but also Gravelly Bay, called Gravelly Bay for a reason. It's full of rocks. But they erected this lighthouse some distance down the waterfront from Port Colborne. And then they erected a lighthouse at a place called Point Abino, or Abino, or however you want to say it. We say Point Abino. It was named after a Jesuit priest who was there in the 1700s. He found this
fascinating
land that juts out into the lake about 2 kilometers long. And it was beautiful, sandy, sort of sand dunes and all. And so he actually found there were indigenous people living there in this location at the time. And so he sort of spent some time there and that, but it's now, weirdly enough, in the Victorian era. The entire point was purchased by a Buffalo businessman who was a wealthy Buffalo businessman and turned it into a private beach and cottage area.
Okay.
So it's still like that today.
Oh, okay.
It's a gated community. You can't just drive into it. To go to the one lighthouse, not this one, to go to the Point Abino lighthouse, you have to go only in with the lighthouse. I guess it's the Lighthouse Appreciation Group, and they have a shuttle bus. So jumping back to that, we'll go back to Port Abino, but this one here, Mohawk Bay, between March 31st and September, it's a bird sanctuary.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there's all kinds of cormorants.
At least it's still in use.
And I just call them shit hawks, really, because it's all kinds of poopy birds that inhabit the island. It gets covered.
Oh yeah.
But there's I think there's like cormorant, and there's different kinds of gulls and terns and different things that actually build their nests there. And so it's a hatchery of sorts. So it's considered protected. So you can't go out and you can't walk all over it and you can't do all these things during that time. But after that, you can certainly visit it, have a picnic there. Now, the only way you can see this lighthouse, though, is there's one road to get to where you can see it.
Okay.
And it's a road that you would never normally say, oh, let's just turn here and go down. Except one day, we were out for a drive, and I said, let's just turn.
Yeah, you found it.
Found this random laneway to see where it goes.
That's awesome.
I do that sometimes, right? I just want to
Yes,
see where something
it
goes.
happens.
And it says dead end on it, right? So I'm like, where does this go? So we drove down this very small, what I would consider more of a laneway, because you can barely pass two cars on it. And there's a very tiny cottage community on the shoreline, except the shoreline here is 100 feet up. So like in England, like Broadstairs, right, where you need like 300 stairs to go down to the beach.
Yes.
It's pretty much the same thing here.
Oh, I hate those things.
At Mohawk Bay. There are no stairs. You cannot go
my
down to the
goodness.
beach unless you want to climb down the hill, which is really eroded away. I went almost down onto the beach one day. I literally braved climbing down the side of this cliff down to the bottom. But then it had rained really badly and there was a bad storm, so a lot of the bottom part had washed away. So I was like, if I go down, I'm not going to get back up. And there's literally nowhere to go when you get down there. The turkey vultures are right there. They perch on the edge of the cliff and then just soar off and fly around this lighthouse. It's a really, really cool spot. So we go out and we stand on the cliff and you can see the lighthouse out there. And it's great on a,
But it's beautiful.
Right. And so it's this really cool old lighthouse. Now, is it haunted? Well, I don't know. I mean, I just think because of the way it looks, and it's got such a really neat old history. It is one of, again, the first working lighthouses.
Oh, great.
On the lake. So 1838, it was built, and it was manned until 1933 when they automated it.
That's quite a long time.
So for almost 100 years, there was a lighthouse keeper living out there in the lake on this. It's a tiny little, it's literally the lighthouse. And if the water rises, it comes right up to the base of the building that you would have lived in. So the island is completely submerged in water. It's a big chunk of rock. So it sits on this big chunk of rock.
Oh, wow.
So over the years, there's been a lot of shipwrecks right nearby it. Again. And so it has to, I mean, I'm hoping one day to catch someone who will give me a boat ride to this location, because I want to walk on this island. I want to get out of the boat and I want to step foot on this and check out the lighthouse. Really, I'm like fading in and out. I'm getting blurry. I'm like, woo! See, I start talking about ghosts and then weird stuff. It's like the ghost in the machine starts happening at my house. I don't see it happening at your house.
How many times did that happen to us on Blog Talk when we were doing the podcast?
Way too many times.
And then we thought we heard a voice. Yes.
So this lighthouse, I'm not going to purportedly say that it's haunted, but it's one of those things where I feel like I'm so drawn to it.
Yes.
Of all the lighthouses that I've seen in my life, and there's been many. Yes. This one, I think it just because it's right now it's unattainable to me. I can't get there. So I want to get there, but it has a real eerie feeling to it. So I'm hoping to step foot there and be able to check it out and see, because I feel like if you've had people there for 100 years,
there's got to be something
in such a desolate spot. You can't get to it, and you would have had to at that time row out in a dory to get there, right? So you would have had to, from the shore, row out. You would have had to put that boat, and that would have been your back and forth. You would have had to somehow go back and forth to shore for food and water and all of those things. I mean, I suppose in 1838 you could have just took your water right out of the lake.
Right.
Freshwater lake, you probably could have just taken it out and drank it from there. But as we get into the 1930s, and then they automate it. So the other one that I want to talk about is Point Avenue. I have indeed been into Point Avenue Lighthouse.
Oh, you have?
I will say that there is definitely somebody there.
Is that the one near Crystal Beach?
How long ago were you there? How long ago was this?
Like not last year. The
okay.
Before. So 2000 and what is the year? Is this 21? So 2019.
Oh wow. Okay.
They shut it down because of COVID. Right. So, and this year they say they may open in the summer, but it doesn't look too hopeful at this point. But
That's
again,
bad.
it's a private gated community, so you cannot just go there. You can't.
Is
You
that
have
the lighthouse that's near Crystal Beach?
Point Abino is, yeah, kind of. It's
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah.
yeah, it is in a gated community, and so you do have to go in there with the group that runs the lighthouse and looks after it and maintains it. You pay, you get on the shuttle, you go, they do a tour of the lighthouse. It's actually a really great spot. It's the cutest, prettiest, and it's the picture on Facebook. That is Point Abino Lighthouse. That's my photograph when I was there.
I'll have to take a look.
It's the most adorable little lighthouse that you've ever seen. It's not a huge lighthouse, but the lighthouse keeper's house originally, that was a light boat. That's another really dangerous spot on the lake there. So there was a lot of shipwrecks happening. And on the American side, they were saying, we need some sort of light to help us so we're not crashing our ships when we're trying to get over to the Canadian side. So they essentially, the first thing they did was send a light boat. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen a light boat.
No.
I've never heard of that, but that sounds pretty fascinating, and it somewhat makes sense. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, and this was around the same time that they built the Mohawk Bay Lighthouse, about 1830s. They sent this light boat. So think of a sort of 1830s wooden, probably about 35-foot boat with literally a light stuck on it.
Okay.
Nobody really mans.
But that's a good idea, though. It sounds like if that's what they need to guide them in the ship.
Right, and so they just affixed the boat with an anchor and that to the area outside of the rocky shoals, and it would float there, bobbing around, much like a buoy, right? But it was lit up. Now it was a man-made. You had to light the light because it wasn't going to keep itself going. So they would go out every day and light the light. And then, it would burn out. And I'm sure that somebody would have had to stay there overnight with it, because if the light went out for any reason, somebody would have to relight that light. There's not too much information on this location, but ultimately what happened is that sunk. It was in a storm and it sunk. So they finally
did.
We need a lighthouse. So they built this adorable little lighthouse there at Point Abino, and it really is so cute. So when you come to this lighthouse, you stop, and it's sort of on a very treed shoreline. And you walk through the trees, and you walk down the sand dunes and across the rocks and out to the lighthouse. But you can't always do that, because weirdly enough, when the lake level rises, the lighthouse is now on its own island. So the lighthouse keeper's house was built much later on. Originally, they were living in the lighthouse. They built a house which stands beside a beautiful arts and crafts style home that the lighthouse keeper would live in. He rigged a line, literally a pulley chair line, from the house to the island. He would get in the chair, pull himself across to the lighthouse.
Wow.
Because when it was cut off by the high water, that was the only way to get there. So that's
incredible.
Story, right? Now, when we were there and we went on the tour, we were so lucky. There was only like 4 people. It was like, we
just
took the first tour of the day was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and it was a really chilly October day.
Oh, right.
Right. So like nobody really wanted to go out into the water and do this. So it was really good. There was like 4 of us, plus the tour guide.
Take the win.
But we went in and we got to walk around, and there's a museum on the main part now of the lighthouse. The interesting thing is that this is the supposed, not this gentleman, because this old lighthouse keeper actually lives in my town. He's here. He moved from.
Oh my goodness!
And he moved to
small world.
So it's supposed to be, I believe, the lighthouse keeper that was there until 1960, before they changed hands. So he was there
Wow.
for some 15 or 20 years. And I was trying to look up his name and I couldn't find it anywhere for the life of me. Like, it was just like, where is his name? I know I wrote it down and I couldn't find it. But this is the gentleman that supposedly haunts the lighthouse. And he's definitely, there is somebody there. I mean, I could feel it, and I could feel a presence when I was there. And it was sort of interesting because—
You feel a male or a female presence?
Oh, male for sure.
Yeah.
No, not a female. No, definitely male, male presence. And especially in the area where I didn't know that there was an office there. There's a desk in there, but it's a museum now, right? So it's kind of set up and it's sort of museum-like. And I didn't want to right away, you know, go,
yeah.
Okay,
just to sort of help yourself
in this space, right? Because, you know, some people just look at you and go, "Are you insane?" So I looked, and I looked at the guide, and I said to him, I go, "Is it haunted?" And he started to laugh.
Oh,
and
he knew.
And then he's telling me the story, and I went, "Oh, well, yes, because I can feel there's this gentleman, and he's in this room." And he goes, "Oh, this used to be his. This was his office. This is where he came, and he kept the logs for the lighthouse and all this." I'm like, "Yeah, it's definitely something here." So it was nice that the guide, the person who was doing that, was able to reiterate that. And this is a person who spends a lot of time at this location. So it's not like he's just a rando tour guide, right? He's actually one of the people that's part of the restoration. They restored the lighthouse. It's cost them a lot of money to restore, all privately funded, all restored. So it's just an amazing little location. Like, it's a really fantastic spot. So maybe, you know, when COVID is all gone, I might be able to approach them and ask if we'd be able to go in and do an investigation. Like, even if it was just for a couple of hours.
That would be awesome. I'd love that. I'd love that.
But it's a great little spot.
I guarantee you'll get something. I just know it.
I got something just being there visiting.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's where it all starts. The minute you sort of sense that presence, and once you start getting the paranormal activity investigation started with the equipment, then it really sort of starts to heat up, I noticed. So.
And the cool thing about this site also is the fact that you can actually go up the stairs to the next level. Like, it was under restoration at the time, but he let us climb up the stairs and stick our head up to the next level where the next set of stairs goes up. And so we were able to sort of go up to the second floor in the lighthouse. I think it's about 4 stories. This one, it's quite little. Like, the Mohawk Bay was quite a tall lighthouse, right? That one was quite big. This one is it's a little more squat, but to me, it's just one of the cutest little lighthouses that I've ever seen. It's just adorable.
Thank you for watching The Ghost Show Online. Join your hosts again next week as they discuss more tales of the supernatural, the paranormal, and all things spectacular. See you soon.